Welcome back. 365 Sports. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoke. Smokey's got the day off in case you're just joining us. Zach Burke and Andrew Valade producing, and Jon Wilner Wilner Hotline joins us now. John, happy Memorial Day. Thanks for hopping in here on the long weekend. I know that I'm sure you've got big plans out there in lovely California of what you're going to do, but I read what you wrote about the CFP and the changes on straight seating. What are your thoughts on it as it relates to the Big 12 and ACC and where their sweet spot really is going to have to be for them to be content this year and then hopefully into the future if it doesn't go 4-4-2-2?
Well, I think that they did compromise, certainly, and as did the group of five schools, group of six, however you want to phrase it. But it's not, to me, just black and white. I think there's a little bit of nuance to the situation, because you can make the case that a conference champion this coming season that is a 5, 6, 7, or 8 seed is actually a better spot than being a 1, 2, 3, or 4 seed, because you would get the home game, which is just, it cannot be undersold how important that, or oversold how important a home game is to your campus community on a whole lot of fronts. So you'd get the home game. You would not have to deal with a 3.5-week layoff, and you get the extra $4 million that you would have gotten for a bye straight into the quarterfinals. So you get the money, the home game, and no bye. Now, the problem, of course, is getting that tier of seeds, because if you are in the ACC or Big 12 or Group of 5, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get moved down to the bottom tier where you have to play on the road in the opening weekend. That's the trick to it. It's certainly threading the needle, but if you could do it, you're actually in a better spot, I think, than being a top 4 seed.
Well, John, you did put a little bit more of a positive spin than I think the initial reaction, which was just all negative. And, especially when you look at what you said, Arizona State, instead of a bye, would be going to Columbus to play Ohio State. So it's a little bit more than you were wanting to probably chew on early, but there are some side effects to it. It was interesting to me to see Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark have almost carbon copy statements after the fact, talking about how this was best for college football. Yes. I know they're probably speaking specifically about the seeding that everybody could agree was kind of wonky. Did you take any more out of their statements other than that?
Well, I thought it was clearly a concerted effort to try to gain the narrative high ground with regard to the negotiations with the Big Ten and the SEC for the format for 2026 and beyond, right? Because the SEC and Big Ten are pushing for 4 AQs each and keeping the ACC and Big 12 with 2 AQs each, right? And ACC and Big 12 understandably pushing back. And I thought Phillips and Yormark were very smart in getting out ahead of this yesterday and saying, look, we compromised for the good of the game for the 25, and what's left unsaid is, all right, SEC and Big Ten, how about you compromise for the good of the game in 26 and beyond with the negotiations over the AQs? Whether it works or not, I don't know, but to me, that was clearly their intent. And, we'll see. I'm skeptical the Big Ten and the SEC are going to budge on the 4-4-2-2 1-3, so to speak. It's like dialing a phone number, right? Because they want those extra at-large spots, 1 for Notre Dame and then 2 for them to take, so that they could each put 5 in. And the ACC and Big 12 are fighting back, and they should fight back. I just don't know how much leverage they've got.
So the Presidential Commission is on hold, and my early assessment of it was, like most commissions, that it was a joke anyway. But apparently Cody Campbell has struck some fear into some of the Big Ten and SEC people, because he's not only lobbying for Texas Tech and the Big 12, he has decided to take, there's more of us than there are of them. So if we kind of have this push and we can use whatever influence we have, maybe we can, crack them a little bit. How much do you think ultimately that will work, if the commission ever gets started going or not? But just having somebody like Cody Campbell now pushing a lot of his influence to the side of, well, this is not the best in the way it's set up right now.
Well, I think it helps. Certainly it helps the Big 12, may help the ACC, Group of Five as well, to have him being a voice on this commission if it does get restarted. I also always get back to the, how well does he know Jimmy Pitaro and Lachlan Murdoch,
Yeah.
Because really so much of this whole thing depends on Fox and ESPN because they're the ATM machines.
Mhm.
And I'm skeptical that they're going to think it's in their best interest financially, good business sense to cut a deal in which, name your school in the Group of Five, or I don't want to pick anybody out specifically, but they want the best matchups possible. And if you're negotiating for, 130 schools as one group, the way Cody Campbell might want to try to do it, I don't know that ESPN and Fox are going to play along with that.
John, you mentioned Notre Dame a few moments ago. I've been hearing on YouTube and every social media platform and just regular conversations about how they're going to be forced to do this or that one day. And yet every move seems to just further strengthen
Absolutely
where they are. So your thoughts on Notre Dame seemingly having a great reason to stay independent as of yesterday and not the alternative that people are kind of wish casting them into the Big Ten at some point by gunpoint, right?
I mean, I think they could end up in the Big Ten eventually, but we're talking about, the next iteration at the earliest. Everything is working for them. It's almost like they're pulling the strings behind the scenes. And let's start with the fact that Notre Dame has a vote in the CFP governance structure, right, as it is currently comprised. Every conference has a vote, and Notre Dame has a vote. That means Notre Dame's vote counts 18 times more than Ohio State's, because Ohio State is just 1 out of 18 in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten has the same number of votes as Notre Dame. To me, it is absurd. And it's also absurd that Notre Dame can keep all its money. It's getting this special deal. I think it's 10, 12 million from the next CFP version, and they get to keep it all. They don't have to share it. They're going to get a special access based on where they're ranked. I mean, Notre Dame's got it great. And then you get the Clemson series, and they're going to have more games with Florida State and Miami. I mean, college football is doing everything they can to make sure Notre Dame stays independent, right? And not get them into a conference with all these moves. I think the first thing that's got to happen is they need to lose some of their influence within the CFP, because it's ridiculous that they have the same number of votes as the SEC and Big Ten do.
Well, look, and it worked out really well for them in that before they weren't ever going to get the first round bye. Now they could very well get the first round bye if they're one of the top four.
I'm with you, but I bet you they would rather have the home game. I'd be willing to bet. I've heard a lot quietly from a lot of folks at the big brand schools that they really like that home game. And if you're Notre Dame, right, let's contrast let's say Notre Dame ASU, right? Notre Dame's got a way better chance under the 2025 structure of getting that sweet spot seed 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Because they're viewed the way the SEC and Big Ten schools are viewed. Whereas ASU or someone else in the Big 12 or ACC, they're going to get viewed more, kind of the second tier. And they're more likely to be that 9 through 12 where they got to open up on the road. I think Notre Dame, if you asked them and gave them a shot of sodium pentothal, they would take number 5 seed every year. You get the home game, no layoff. So you're ready for the quarterfinals, and you get your special Notre Dame, financial deal.
Is that home game so sweet? And I know 16 because the TV networks want that ultimately, and it's more money and more SEC or Big Ten teams and whatever else. But is it also that allure of like, we don't want the bye, we want the freaking home game. We'd rather have that. I mean, that just seems to be such a popular thing that it's more beneficial or more desirable than the actual bye potentially.
Oh, I think it is. I mean, we saw the impact of the bye. I mean, Oregon's the best case example, right? Ohio State had 10 days. They played at home. They won. They had 10 days to get ready for the Rose Bowl. Oregon is sitting around for 3.5 weeks. I mean, look at what happened to Boise State. Look at what happened to ASU. The teams that had the byes fell behind early. Now, ASU managed to come back, obviously. But the score, if I'm remembering correctly, the first quarter score in the quarterfinals was like 42-0. The teams that had the buys were outscored 42-0 in the first quarter. And I just think it's a competitive disadvantage to be sitting around for 3.5 weeks when your opponent has played and only has a 10-day break.
Yeah, well, like, especially if that's the loser of the conference championship game, like they may even played, like they're ready to go, like they're ready to get back out there and get they're ready to go. The taste out of their mouth. Yep. John,
the thing you mentioned though about 16, I'm still waiting to see how they're going to get that logistically figured out, right? To me, you can't put 8 games on that weekend before Christmas because of the NFL. So that means you're going into Army-Navy weekend, and that could be problematic for schools based on their conference championship game. It's going to be very interesting to see how they make the 16 work logistically.
If we almost had the problem where Army or Navy would have made the playoff this year, so then they're ultimately going to have to probably move Army Navy, which again they've come for every other tradition. John, I'm sure that's the last bastion of it. Yep. Do you think with 16 they can make it work? Ultimately, like the bowl games become less and less relevant, and depending on the economy any given year, it might really take a hit on people going now. Like you had 16 teams and, road game. If say you win a road game in the first round, then you've got to go to a bowl. Maybe you've already been to a conference title game or one of these play-in games or whatever. Eventually you're going to run into people who are going to show up at these neutral sites.
I think that's the case. We saw a little bit of that this past season, but it's getting harder and harder for the fans. And when you then are going to extend, the championship game in 2 years is like January 27th, right? So you are extending the playoff potentially, it's 5 weeks. And I think when you add the conference championship cost and then all those rounds of travel with airfare and the time commitment from start to finish, it's really a burden on fans. There's no doubt about that. I think they've got to condense the playoff, move it earlier into January, get as much done in December as possible, get out from under the NFL, because when the NFL goes to 18, that's just going to create more traffic for broadcast windows for the CFP in January.
John, I saw where you talked to Arizona State's Graham Rossini, and obviously it's been a banner year, and I think you posted something just a little while ago, as a matter of fact, on that discussion. Just how different does it feel around Arizona State right now, and kind of what are they looking at in terms of, I guess, moving forward with this momentum, but also not in the clear in every area imaginable either? Just how would you talk about their positioning and their future as opposed to maybe where we would have been about a year ago?
I mean, a year ago, they were coming off the first season under Kenny Dillingham, and what were they, 3-9, I think it was, and lost a bunch of transfers. Nobody knew who the quarterback was going to be. Real tough situation, but Dillingham has done a great job. I mean, above and beyond everything else, it shows you the power of winning football. It makes everything else better, right? And ASU had an incredible season, and that has kind of blown away a lot of the dark clouds that were circling over that program. I think Rossini has done a very good job in the community, and that was the most important thing for whoever was going to replace Ray Anderson. Had to put a better public face on ASU athletics. Anderson was not popular with the constituents. He did not like interacting with the fans. It was almost disdain. And Rossini is affable and wants to hear what the feedback is going to be. And I think that has helped ASU community outreach. And that is so important these days because you are hugely dependent on the support of your fans for your NIL game. Much more. It used to be you just needed fan support for donations and to sell tickets. And now you need it for donations and sell tickets. Oh, and by the way, you got to fund our NIL operation, right? Because the donations don't stop to athletics generally. So he's done a very good job on the public facing front, which was really important. They do have to figure out what's going to happen with basketball, both with the arena and with Bobby Hurley's contract, right? He's entering a lame duck season. But, for right now, a year into his tenure, it's probably gone as well as ASU could have possibly hoped.
You covered the Pac-12 for so long. What was the talk about Arizona State when from the early 2000s on, they were, in my opinion, one of the most underachieving athletic departments that there was. What was the talk inside the Pac-12 about that?
They've always been referred to as a sleeping giant. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you're not sleeping, you're in a coma. And that's kind of what I've always thought. And we'll see if what they have done here under Dillingham can be sustained. They've had good seasons, right? They had Jake Plummer. They went to the Rose Bowl in 96. They won the Pac-12 South under Todd Graham in 2013. They had some good years under Erickson. They have never been able to sustain it. We'll see if they can do that now. But they've always been viewed as a sleeping giant. ASU itself is very tired of that description. But you can understand why a lot of people thought that. It's harder than it looks there, though, because Phoenix is such a pro market. I think it's better. The dynamics are better for them to have sustained success now because the high school football in and around Phoenix is much better than it used to be. So if you can recruit well in state, you've got a better roster foundation than existed for them, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
John, what do you think about the baseball tournament in the Big 12 being moved out to Phoenix?
I think it's good for the Big 12, partly because they don't have to worry about rain ever. For one thing, it's going to be hot, but it's not nearly, you don't have the humidity and you don't have to worry about rain. I think it's good to for the Big 12 strategically, it's good to plant flags in the new territories, so to speak, right? And you've got baseball in Arizona where it is very popular and you've got two good programs and you've got all those fans who live in Phoenix and love spring training. I think it's a really smart move. And they had business meetings coming up in Orlando where UCF is located. They're doing a nice job. They had Football Media Day was in Las Vegas last summer. They're doing a good job of getting around and about and, just outside of the traditional Big 12 footprint with these new schools.
Jon Wilner Wilner Hotline. John, enjoy the long weekend.
You too. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks for hopping on, Jon Wilner, the Wilner Hotline. In a minute, we'll have